Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Jane Morgan, the Investor and Media Relations Advisor for Aura Energy, with the ASX code AEE and the AIM code AURA. Aura Energy recently announced strategic changes to focus on production at the Tiris uranium project and the high growth demand for nuclear power and carbon-free energy. Today, I am joined by Non-Executive Chairman Martin Rogers, Managing Director and CEO Peter Reeve, and we are also joined by Aura's new proposed board, so Non-Executive Chairman and Mining M&A Heavyweight Phil Mitchell. Phil holds significant experience, having held senior roles with global mining companies, Rio Tinto, Anglo American, and heading acquisitions for billionaire Robert Friedland's company, High Power Exploration. We are also joined by proposed non-executive director, Warren Mundine, one of Australia's prominent independent thinkers and a thought leader in the mining sector and nuclear power space, as a former director of the Australian Uranium Association. Also on the webinar today, we are joined by non-executive director, Brian Dixon, who holds significant experience as a chartered accountant, building junior exploration companies into producers, with over 20 years in the mining sector. Today's webinar will be a Q&A session, so please feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So to kick things off, Martin, I'll go to you first. So the company recently announced a transformational restructure to advance Aura from a uranium explorer to uranium producer. So can you please elaborate on this?
Yeah, thanks, Jane, and thanks all investors for joining us today. And it's been quite an amazing 2021 for Aura Energy. I'd like to say that Aura's always been a magnificent uranium project, but now we're ready to set sail. What we're seeing in the uranium market is we're switching from a bear market, and keep in mind 10 years ago this year was the Fukushima nuclear accident, and that caused a complete panic out there and stop people investing in uranium projects and in uranium mining. And what's going to actually happen, we think, in the uranium market as it switches from bear to bull market is that companies that are ready to go onto production are very much going to be rewarded in 2022 and 2023. So in this effect, we've chosen a new board that has a strong focus on production. These new board members, you're going to meet them today, have extensive industry experience and contacts that will allow us to get this project up and going, have the operational expertise as well, and expand on financing that we originally announced with our offtake provider. But as we announced, there's many more financings that can be done, many more offtakes that can be done. And this will help commence production in a very efficient and productive way, and also maximize ultimately return for you, our shareholders. And putting the Tiris uranium mine into production is going to be the real focus. We're going to hear later on about a spin out of our gold project in Mauritania. And this is all about capitalizing on the rapid growing demand for nuclear. So I think with those opening statements, I'll pass back over to you, Jane.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So I might jump into a few things. So Phil, just with your expertise, which lies in M&A, do you intend to bring new opportunities to Aura?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jane. And Marty, thank you for your introduction. This is the first time I had a chance to speak to anybody in relation to Aura, and really pleased to be here today. Jane, you asked about my background and in M&A, and yeah, I've spent a lot of time in M&A, both with Rio Tinto and with Robert. But the work that I'm actually most proud of is that while I was at Rio Tinto Iron Ore as the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Development Officer, we built a strategic plan that recognised the growth in demand for iron ore, and we built that plan to take us from 60 million tonnes per annum when I started at Rio Tinto Iron Ore to almost 400 million tonnes when I left. And of that growth, that 350 million tonnes of growth, about 50 was in M&A. So I've spent a lot of time expanding resources, building reserves, building CapEx projects. And I think that they are core to my DNA. So the vision that I'm looking at for Aura is one where we look at all aspects of growth. We think about the strategic positioning of the uranium sector, and we look at M&A, but we also really focus on what we've got and the fantastic resource that we've got, expanding that resource, turning it into reserves, expanding it into further reserves, and building the project. So all aspects of growth. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Phil. And just another one for you, actually. So with Aura's low market cap, as well as low operating costs and CapEx of the project, can you please explain your shared vision to expand Aura to $1 billion company?
Yeah, and that's exactly the macro picture that we can all aspire to. And as you say, the low operating costs that we've identified, the low capital expenditure are at the core to that strategic opportunity, but also at the core, and as the World Nuclear Association's recently released report says, the demand for uranium is going to grow from about 62,000 tonnes per annum in 2021 to up to 112,000 tonnes per annum. So we are the people who are going to contribute to some of that 50,000 tonnes per annum by 2040, and that's our key task. Take the low operating costs, take the low market cap, low capital costs, convert those into production, and start to fill that growth gap that's required for the industry. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'd like to, this is a question for Warren, and thank you for joining the board of Aura. So Warren, as a thought leader in the nuclear power space, including carbon-free power, what was it that attracted you most to Aura?
I think it's a great time. I think there's a great opportunities for the nuclear energy industry as a whole, and I think, and I believe that especially when you start looking at what's happening with climate change and zero emissions by 2050, you're looking at the industry as a whole. There is a lot of growth that I see coming into the future, and I reckon that. And so look, when I looked at Aurora, I thought it was in a very good space and coming through at a very good time to actually to take advantage of what's happening on the global market.
Thanks, Warren. And just further to that, so where do you see the nuclear market going to the future?
Look, the nuclear market, has had its ups and downs, and we've seen that, like things were looking pretty good, and then you saw Fukushima that happened, and that. Look, there's a lot of huffing and puffing and false information and that goes out there about the industry. You've got something like 32 countries in the world that have reactors. You've got something like 55 reactors that are going to be coming on board. They're being built now. You've also seen China going to be ramping up theirs. You're looking at England now, especially after Glasgow. They said at Glasgow they're turning to nuclear again. France is looking at starting and kicking up their reactors as well. Then you see Poland, you see a whole wide range of countries across the world. We're looking at India as another example of that. And so I see it, as Martin said it earlier, I see it as becoming a bullish market now. And as we head into production, there's a great opportunity to get into a strong position in that marketplace.
Thank you for that. And just a question for Peter Reeve, Managing Director and CEO. So, Peter, Aura has the lowest capex and operational costs compared to its peers. So, can you please elaborate further on the deposit and its shallow free digging mineralisation?
When I answer this question, that it's done geological luck that we got here. The geos don't like me saying it, but it is true. We've got fine carnotite, and fine carnotite has allowed this deposit to really form in a surface fashion in the desert. So that's happened over many years, and it's concentrated the deposit into about a 5 or 6 metre band in the low points of these desert pans. And the concentrations worked very well. And as we've spoken about, we with the fine carnotite and the host coarse weathered granite that the fine carnotite sits within, we end up with a great opportunity to do the beneficiation, and we end up with a leach feed grade of some 2,000 to 2,500 ppm of uranium. So with the beneficiation, it allows us to make the plant small. We reject a lot of material at the front end, and therefore the expensive part of the plant, the leach, the packaging, etc., is quite small. And so the capex results in a small number as well for the same reason. The fact that you don't crush, you don't grind, you don't drill and blast also saves a lot of operating costs and a lot of capital costs. I always say, as a metallurgist, formerly a rusty metallurgist now, that to get through a mineral processing plant without a crushing grinding unit and without the power required and the infrastructure required to host all those pieces, it's an absolute boon. So yeah, we're very happy to see this project now start to move into production with this new board, and we think it's going to be a great success because you've got to get the thing into production in the early part of the cycle, and that's what Aura presents as an opportunity. A lot of other companies are a big capex ticket. They're going to take longer to get financed, longer to get into production. Aura can be there soon, so that's why I'm a big fan.
Thanks for that, Pete. And Brian, just one for you now. So the Terrace project is considered at the near-term production stage of its life cycle. So what do you believe are the critical next steps for production to begin?
Thanks, Jane. Look, yeah, Aura Energy is in a remarkable situation where it's got not only completed a DFS on its project, but it's fully permitted and in a position to go into production during a rising uranium price. Look, right now we're in a very solid position with a $100 million market cap. The capex is less than $75 million. So that gives us, one of the critical steps is how we finance that capex and the development. But having a capex that's a fraction of our market cap today gives us many options in how we finance this into production. I think the other thing we've really got to focus on is the execution plan and how we de-risk and mitigate the key risks we see associated with putting Terrace into production. And the other thing, that Phil alluded to is, the total opportunity here hasn't been fully defined. So there's an opportunity here to really look at how big can this project be and what is the total opportunity. So, whilst we're looking at the financing options, further de-risking the execution plan, we can also look at how we fully define the opportunity.
Thank you for that, Brian. Look, we've got another one for Phil, actually. So, Phil, you've led acquisitions for Robert Freeland, so has uranium been a focus for him? And what are your thoughts on the roles that uranium may play as a viable option of power supply in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, Jane, you'll be unsurprised. I'm not going to talk about what I do with Robert or any sort of areas that stray into confidentiality or stray into conflicts. But suffice it to say, I spend a lot of time thinking about the energy sector, all aspects of it. both with Robert and more broadly. And also suffice it to say that I've spoken to Robert, and there's absolutely no conflict with my role here at a proposed role here at Aura. Let's talk more substantively. I gave some numbers before: 50,000 tonnes of extra uranium required over the next 10 or so years. It's that we need to be aspiring into, and Warren has talked about the growth that's happening in China. Warren's talked a little bit about the growth that is happening in other parts of Europe. One of the really important parts about the nuclear energy sector is that it's one of the few non-thermal. It is the only non-thermal baseload electricity generation opportunity. Baseload being that it can operate at all times and provide the baseload into a system. And we saw coming out of the Glasgow exercise, people in the United Kingdom starting to scratch their heads about the volatility of power sourced from imported gas, and the volatility of power sourced from renewables, especially until battery technologies improve. People are turning to nuclear as a base load. We can see it in China, we can see it in Europe. We can also see that Rolls-Royce's recent small modular reactor exercise offers us a marketplace and offers countries an ability to put in place nuclear power with reasonably well-known costs, good safety, and good reliability parameters. I think that the future for nuclear energy, electricity energy, is very strong against the background of that demand scenario.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Phil. Warren, I know you did answer this in the chat just now, but just for the webinar attendees that will be watching this online. So, Warren, what needs to happen for Australia to adopt nuclear power?
Look, in Australia, it's really about the courage of the politicians and also the industry. We have to get out and prosecute our case to the general public out there. I'm a great believer in my high school science, which is if you leave a vacuum, then the vacuum gets filled. And what's been happening for many years now is a lot of people have been putting nonsense out there. We have an industry that is safe. We have an industry that is the future, really, if you're going to be talking, and the now and the future, if we're really talking about zero emissions and by 2050, and if we're going to be running the modern, economically strong economies that we have and helping developing nations to come up to that economic strength as well, then nuclear is the answer. So we have to, as an industry, and we have to get the politicians to do this as well, is to actually get out there and talk about it and talk to everyone and show them that that it is a safe, very good industry that will keep our economies going 24/7.
So are there any other uranium companies with a presence in Mauritania?
No other uranium companies. I see those questions there from Cameron. Thank you. No other companies there that we are aware of now, and there are definitely none currently exploring, and I don't know if there's any intending to explore, because they're intending to, if they are. So no, like we had pretty intrepid geos even before I came to the company, and Mauritania did a survey, a geophysical survey, and they had it out for 7 years. Nobody took up the challenge to go into the Sahara Desert. At that time, it was pretty difficult. It was a serious expedition. Our guys did, and essentially they went in and they looked at the radiometric survey, the outline of it, and they really found the deposit pretty well instantaneously. Now, on the same basis, on other radiometric surveys through the country, there doesn't seem to be large tracts of area where you might find uranium unless it's in some other form. So at this stage, we seem to have the category kill position on uranium in Mauritania.
Thanks, Pete. And just another one for you as well. So Aura's recently announced the proposed spin out of its gold assets held by Archean Greenstone Gold. So can you please tell us a little bit more about these assets and why they're so exciting?
Yeah, look, again, Neil Clifford, principal geo, really of both Aura and now going to be of the spin out, is a great geo. He's found 25 million ounces of gold. There wouldn't be more than a handful of people in the world who could ever say that. He conceived these projects in another sister company we had, and so he was the driver and the instigator. Initially, they raised $10 million on it, spent $3 million, and when uranium was looking terrible in the interim, as everybody on the call probably knows, we felt the need to diversify somewhat, just to play a few more arrows out of the quiver. And this sister company, decided to drop those gold tenements. We picked it up for $100,000. When you see Archean Greenstone, it should just say to you Kalgoorlie, and then you look for the companies that have had success in the area. There's only one giant anomaly in this area, and it's Kinross's Tasiast deposit, about 40 kilometres to the north, and it's a 20 million ounce deposit. Once they cracked the geological code there about 10 years ago, they started drilling, and they were discovering 1 million ounces a month. So it's been a very fruitful exercise for Kinross. We've got the bottom half of the belt, they've got the top half of the belt, and it's a famous comment actually that Robert Friedland used to make. This is Kalgoorlie without the crowds, and we've got it all to ourselves. I'm sure Phil has heard that one before. I just think it's apart from the fact that we own it, you very rarely see blank pieces of Archean Greenstone belt like this. So we've got some good results. We've got some nice battery metal and nickel results as well along the way. So we've got a really broad canvas over a big area, and it'll take us years and years to look through it. But we plan to IPO it so that Aura can focus on the uranium. I'll keep supporting the company in its ambitions with the uranium deposit, because we'll be there together. And this can be a fabulous dividend, extra dividend to shareholders, and that's what we plan to make it. I want to make it a very big company.
Well, thank you for that. Looks like we've got all the questions answered today. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. And thank you all for joining me and the Aura team for the investor webinar. A copy of today's recording will be available online. And if we have missed any questions, please feel free to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of our ASX releases. But thank you all for joining us.